These are Henry VIII's last three wives, Anne of Cleves, Catherine Howard, and Catherine Parr. And in this video we're going to be transforming their many portraits to see how they might have looked in real life using my technology and Photoshop skills, as well as we're going to be diving into their stories to see more about what their deal was. So let's get started. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more historical recreations, and let me know in the comments who you want to see in real life. Anne of Cleves was Henry VIII's fourth wife. She was born in 1515 in West Germany, 1 year before Henry's eldest, Mary, was born. Her father was a duke there and ruled over the lands of Cleves and Mark. Her mother was an heiress and whose own father was a duke. So she came from a very powerful German family from both sides. Her education was more practical and was more typical of German nobility than the English, whose daughters were educated more scholarly. And this was different than what Henry was used to in a woman. After all, he grew up being raised by strong women like his mother. He married Catherine of Aragon and Anne Boleyn, who were both extraordinarily educated. And even Jane Seymour was decent. So when he met Anne of Cleves, he was not used to such a practical woman. Henry valued education and cultural sophistication in women, but Anne lacked these traits. She was skilled in needlework, loved playing games, and could run any household herself, but lacked intellectual conversation. Plus, she didn't know the English language, only German. Nevertheless, Anne was considered gentle, virtuous, and docile, which is why she was recommended as a suitable candidate for Henry, as he was searching for a new wife to give him his spare, a Duke of York. Also, politically she was a good candidate because France and England didn't trust each other, so a political alliance with her powerful German family was nice to have. By 1539, a wedding was in the midst. Anne was tall and slim, of middling beauty and of very assured and resolute countenance. She had long hair, fair skin, and looked older than her age. When Henry met Anne, he complained, "She is nothing so fair as she hath been reported." He complains she is plainer than what was told to him. She also didn't seem interested in Henry either. She regarded him little. Henry initially didn't want to go through with the marriage, but it was too late as rejecting her might spoil his German relations. So in 1540 when they got married, she was 24 and Henry was 48. Their wedding night was unsuccessful. It was never consummated. Henry said, "I liked her before not well, but now I like her much worse." 6 months later in June, they both agreed it wasn't working, and they signed an annulment. Henry and Anne remained good friends though. She stayed in England the rest of her life as she was content there, as a woman with independence and money. As part of her settlement, she received homes, palaces, and castles. She was an honorary member of the king's family, and referred to as the king's beloved sister. She was invited to court often, and out of gratitude for her not contesting the annulment, she was given precedence over all women in England, except for his wife and daughters. Anne got along with his two daughters, Mary and Elizabeth. She even attended Mary's coronation alongside Elizabeth. Though after the Wyatt Rebellion, that scared Mary into thinking Elizabeth was trying to take the throne, Anne wasn't seen much more. She retired to her estates. In 1557, she is ill and dies possibly from cancer. She was 41 or 42. And the last of Henry's wives to die, surpassing his last, Catherine Parr, by 9 years. She put her family, even the future Queen Elizabeth, her ladies-in-waiting and servants, all in her will. She even asked Mary and Elizabeth to employ them in their households. Anne was remembered as a sweet, gracious, and humane mistress. She was thought to be his most successful wife. Henry's fifth wife was Catherine Howard. Catherine was the first cousin to Anne Boleyn and second cousin to Jane Seymour. Her father was a lord, but the third son of a duke. As a result, she had an aristocratic background, but lacked the funds to support it, as her father being the third son never received the dukedom, and coupled as a spendthrift, his fortune evaporated. Katherine was the 10th child of her mother, so by the time she was born, her father was begging for alms from more affluent relatives. Katherine was born in South London, and from ages 11 to 18 was educated at her step-grandmother's house, the Dowager Duchess. Soon after her mother's death, the Dowager Duchess was a ward to other affluent girls also, so Katherine was not alone there. Katherine was not scholarly or devout. She was a joker, and didn't take seriously her studies. She was giggly, vivacious, and brisk. Katherine entered into a few relationships with other men while at school, and this would bite her in the butt later on. At 18, Katherine's uncle found her a job at court as lady-in-waiting to Anne of Cleves, who was just about to marry Henry. As Henry and Anne never hit it off, his eyes wandered and found Katherine. He began to court her. Katherine's eyes, though, were wandering too, and she began a relationship with one of Henry's courtiers, Culpeper, which continued during her marriage to Henry. Henry and Katherine were married the same month that he and Anne were annulled, July 1540. Katherine was 18 and Henry was 49. She was not coronated yet. Henry was waiting for her to get pregnant and give birth. As a flirtatious teenager who just won the lottery but never paid attention at school, you can imagine where this is going to go. She was carefree and got everything she wanted, but then her past relations resurfaced, and investigations were underway. Culpeper's relationship with Katherine was found out, and also her prior relationship with Derham from school. Note, Culpeper and Derham both worked at court, so they were charged for adultery and killed. Katherine was stripped of her title as queen and imprisoned in a convent during the winter of 1541. Henry's tenure with Katherine was when he really started to sink into morbidity and have greater mood swings. He had an ulcer in his leg too that was contributing to his discomfort. Katherine had to wait for her life until early 1542 when she was around 21, because at that time a bill was passed that made it treason for the queen to fail to disclose her sexual history within 20 days of marriage to the king. This made Katherine guilty on all grounds. No trial was needed. She was beheaded a few days later and buried in the same chapel as Anne Boleyn. Katherine, by contemporary terms, had been described as an empty-headed wanton and a juvenile delinquent. And that's Henry's 4th and 5th wife. His last wife was Catherine Parr, but that'll be in the next video, so make sure to check that one out, part 2, for her transformations. Thank you for watching, subscribe for more historical recreations, and let me know in the comments who you'd like to see in real life, and I will see you in the next one.